What is up, Bitcoin miners? Good morning. Good morning. I hope you guys are all doing well. So today we have a jam-packed session. We're going to be talking with Ryan from CryoByte. Ryan has been in the Bitcoin mining sector for a while, and he noticed a need for a new cooling solution that home miners and business owners alike could utilize to make their mining operations much more efficient. Now, this technology can be utilized by the large mega miners, and it can be utilized by the small home miners like myself and like some of you. So, as you guys know, I am a huge hash rate heater aficionado, to coin the word from Tyler Stevens. I love hash rate heating. I love being able to hook up a Bitcoin miner in my home, heat my house, collect some sats, reduce my electricity bill, like all of it. It just gets my blood pumping. So to talk to Ryan today about their CryoBlock, which is like I said, a new hybrid cooling solution for single miners, is just an amazing thing. So I'm super excited about it. This episode is one of those episodes where we are not going to dive too far down the rabbit hole of like the technicals of like how do you set this thing up, how does it work. We'll dive into a little bit of it. We'll kind of hear, as always, we'll hear the guests' history and like how they got into Bitcoin and like what kind of incentivized them to build this product. And so, with that being said, I hope you guys really enjoy it. I'm looking forward to it. I've built a few hash rate heaters in my short time being a Bitcoin miner, and every time I do it, there's always something that you could do better. Some way that you can make it smaller. You don't always have to have one of these big, huge, long, AC infinity fans with the miner and the filter, and it becomes 5 feet long and 55 pounds. Like, that's not very conducive to a healthy home life balance, I guess you could say, especially if you're married with kids. So that's why that one sits in my studio. But eventually, I want to get my hands on one of these devices from Ryan and CryoByte, so that I can, iterate and build something really cool for myself. A water cooled, air cooled miner that allows me to capture that efficiency and maintain throughout the entire year. Something that would allow me to dissipate heat outside of the home during the summer and utilize that heat inside the home during the winter. So maybe this summer I'm going to start playing around with that. We don't know yet. Either way, I'm excited about it. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Again, reminder, like, if you like this, if you enjoy this content, please like, comment, subscribe, leave a comment for me. Let me know what you think about it. I always am looking for your feedback, trying to understand how I can do a better job as a podcast host and, building out this podcast. Also, you guys might have noticed, I'm really excited about this, but the podcast studio has changed around a little bit. We got some cool, smooth vibes going in here. We got some new lights, a new banner, some new decorations, all that good stuff. So huge shout out to Scott and John over at Bitcoin Mining World and MKE Video. You guys are the shit. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you've allowed me to do in the studio today. So with that being said, let's get into the meat of the episode today. But before that, I want to show you guys.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right. Ryan, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. When I reached out to you on Twitter, I didn't expect the response that I got. And so, everybody's always excited to come on and talk about like what they're building, but not everybody's building products like the CryoBlock. Okay, like we're not going to dive into it just quite yet. Let's kind of like hold off a bit, but I just want to tell you like how excited I am to actually get to play around with this. Not only is it a really cool new technology for cooling, but it's also the price point of it is very approachable for new miners. I mean, I told you kind of offline, and most of the audience knows already. I spent like $2,200 on the hash rate heater that I built in my house, and the device that you have is less than a third of that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's going to be really cool, really exciting. Thank you again for coming on the show today. But let's kind of just start with a little bit of an introduction of who Ryan is. How did you get into Bitcoin mining? But before that, what is your history? Like where did you go to school? Like what is your kind of pre-Bitcoin story and that journey into Bitcoin?
definitely. So I'm born and raised here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I got into Bitcoin back in 2012, but my journey before that was really based in traditional finance. So went to school and have a degree in finance and economics. Was pursuing traditional investment banking type roles. Worked for a small regional bank here in Ohio. But when I learned about Bitcoin, kind of by chance, it really changed the trajectory of where I was going, and it really opened my eyes to a new world of finance and everything that Bitcoin and decentralization brings. So, um, I guess to kind of segue into my story of Bitcoin, I found out about Bitcoin and in particular Bitcoin mining in 2012. So at that time, I was a senior in college pursuing that finance and economic degree. But as a side hustle, I had a mobile game development studio. So this was when smartphones had just been out for like 3 years. It was really cool. It was just like a labor of love side project. I would design all these games and put them all together, write the storyline, but I wasn't a developer. So I would send them over to a developer to kind of put everything together. Being the poor college kid that I was, eating ramen noodle as most of us were, um, I had to pay the bill somehow. So I had to pay that developer. So I did what mobile game developers did at the time, which was include advertising in the games. That was before we had all these micro payments and small economies within games. It was you just slap some ads on it, and the ad revenue pays for the development cost. So I did that for a little while, but I quickly found out how awful advertising was. I spent my time building this game that I thought would be really fun, and on top of it, you have banner ads and pop-up ads and video ads. You have to make users complete surveys to get to the next level and download other apps, and it quickly became, instead of a labor of love, more of an annoyance. The game quality went down. So in 2012, I'm Googling other ways to monetize these games. And that's when I found out about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. And to me, I had education in finance. It really opened my eyes to uh, a really cool future, having a decentralized currency that wasn't controlled by any central party. And the mining aspect was really fascinating to me too, because for the first time, you had a way to create a hard asset, one of the best assets that's ever been created, simply with computational power and electricity. And that was mind blowing. That was so cool and fascinating to me. So I dove into Bitcoin mining and learned all about it. And the wheel started turning in my head of, hey, I'm trying to monetize a device that has computational power and electricity. I'm trying to replace the advertising, the annoyance of it all, the data tracking, the intrusiveness of advertising, something that I didn't like at all. And I was like, I wonder if you could replace advertising with mining. And I'm not talking about, hundreds of dollars per user. If you could just create 1 or 2 cents over the course of like a year from a user from mining, basically turning electricity into value, I wonder if that would be a better business model than advertising. So kind of dove into that. I found a gentleman who was creating mobile apps that mined on your phone. Spoke to him and quickly learned that mining Bitcoin was not going to work. That was competitive. But he was mining what were called, altcoins, script-based coins, Litecoin, things like that. So together, we actually worked on building what's called a software development kit, an SDK, that mobile apps of all shapes and sizes could add to their games or their apps. And instead of monetizing through ads, it would monetize through mining. And I wanted to kind of share the revenue with users of the phone. But at that time, you couldn't explain what Bitcoin was to somebody. It was way over people's heads, still is kind of
I
today.
was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't changed that much, although adoption is definitely picking up. So to think that we were going to have somebody create a wallet and write down their seed phrases and know how to capture Bitcoin was just not possible. So we thought, what if we just pool all of the mining rewards into a pot and we offer them as like reward points or like tickets in an arcade. So now you add another layer to games where you are achieving different things and you're earning reward points for it. And those reward points could be redeemable for real world items like anything from a discount code at a retailer all the way to, we had like a PlayStation that you could save up, just like a Dave and Buster's or an arcade. You save up your tickets and you win. So that was kind of our business model. Is the developer's better off because you're not including all these ads, you're not violating any privacy of your users. It's just mining at a very low rate in the background of your phone. Users don't have to weather all the ads and videos and stuff like that, and they earn rewards that they can redeem for real world value. So we thought it was a pretty cool idea. We created that SDK. We tested it as an alpha version. Any phone I could get my hands on, I was adding it to. So I was mining on my mom's phone at the time. All my friends and family had my app installed and were using it. And the cool thing was it worked really well. It created more value than advertising did. There was no downsides because we created the software in a way where it would like monitor the temperature of your CPU, it would monitor the temperature of your battery. It'd make sure that your phone was plugged in and charging at basically a normal rate. Make sure that it was connected to the internet. So we had all this usability, and we were mining at such a low rate because we were only looking for pennies over a year that it was all done in the background of your phone.
And
so
this
long
was
story short,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so this was 2012, 2013 era.
Exactly. So 2012 into 2013 was when we kind of started developing the first versions of it. And then I believe it was like 2014, we launched the first open beta. So we had like 3 apps that had partnered with, we explained to them how it worked. We had end user license agreements included. So like you would read through and it would kind of tell you what was happening to your phone and how it was trying to replace advertising. Again, hard to describe what Bitcoin mining is today, much less back in 2014. So they partnered with us and we launched, and for like 3 weeks, it was working very well. It was working exactly how our tests were. Users were loving it because they could compete for real prizes and earn value, no ads. Developers were making more money. We cut out the middleman of advertising, so it was all great. And then out of nowhere, an article came out from none other than an antivirus software that said your phone is infected with this malware that it's going to blow up your phone, and it's mining this dark web cryptocurrency that's used for drug laundering, and the typical story that we hear about Bitcoin and things like that. So when that broke, we paused everything because we were like, this is not at all what this is doing. Like, where's the disconnect here? So we had contacted a lawyer to kind of see what was going on. He said, you didn't do anything wrong at all. You have a unique business model that people just don't understand yet. And within that time that we paused, we received a request from the Attorney General of New Jersey. I'd never been to New Jersey in my life. We don't even know if we had any users there, but they requested all of our code, all of our data, everything we were doing. So we went back to our lawyer and said, what's this? And he said, send it all to him. You guys didn't do anything. Again, you have a business model that people don't get yet. So we sent them everything, and it was kind of crickets for months. And then next thing we know, they said, we're sending this to the Federal Trade Commission. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what is going on? How do they not understand that this is just replacing advertising in a much more user-friendly way? So they sent it to the Federal Trade Commission, and weeks go by, months go by, crickets, and then they come out and say, hey, you either have to settle and sign this agreement, or we're going to basically take you to court over mining on people's phones. So me having still being a poor recent college graduate, working a traditional banking job, but paying a lawyer $700 an hour. I was like, let's just get this over with and
Hmm.
sign a settlement. I didn't know at the time that the Attorney General of New Jersey was really going hard after any Bitcoin mining. There was a group of MIT students that basically developed the same exact software to monetize websites on your desktop computer that I was doing to monetize mobile apps. Jeremy Rubin, actually a very well-known Bitcoiner, does a lot for the Bitcoin community. Him and a team called Tidbit out of MIT, they face the same subpoena from the Attorney General of New Jersey. They fought theirs though, so they had the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They had support from MIT, whereas I just kind of said, "Yeah, here you go."
Hmm.
So theirs, and they ended up settling with the Attorney General of New Jersey. I settled with the Attorney General and the Federal Trade Commission. And long story short, that was my first instance in introduction into Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. So not your
Oof.
typical story, definitely not where I thought it was going to go, but uh, what I'm thankful for is really going through that whole experience. It taught me a lot about Bitcoin. Obviously, I learned everything there was to know about mining and Bitcoin, and had my financial background to kind of see, hey, this is the future. So, uh, long-winded answer, but that was my introduction into Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining.
Well, man, you've been through the ringer, I would say. I want to take it back to the very beginning of that story. You see a lot, and this happens in Bitcoin. Anybody who's been in Bitcoin for long enough, especially building a business or trying to just do something, um, you learn that the the fiat virus in general, is prevalent. It is sedacious. It is very disgusting and sick, and it infects everything and anything that it can get its hands on. You're talking about building these games, these apps for your phone, and having to monetize it so that you as a poor college student can fund this app development. Well, you've got to kind of concede to these predacious and horrible advertisers who are going to prey on all of your users, who you want them to have a good experience. You want them to enjoy this game that you've poured your heart and soul into, but they can't enjoy it because they're getting hit with all these ads all the time. And so, like, that's one part. And then you're like, okay, let me find a way to not have to do that. And so you come up with this really great solution, amazing solution. Kudos to you for coming up with that. But then again, you see that fiat virus start to leach into what you're doing, and because they can't fight you on like why this is not a better solution, they have to go in a roundabout way and attack you in a way that you can't defend yourself. And you see this all the time. You see it in almost every aspect of fiat itself. If they can't get you to stop by controlling you, they're going to get you to stop by suing you. And it's a disgusting way to go around and skirt the rules and really just kind of prey on you. And so I I hate the fiat games. I hate the money over morals kind of attitude that everybody in fiat land has kind of unwittingly played a role in. So yeah, that's one thing. One thing I want to kind of ask is, have you been in contact with this Jeremy guy who built the, like, from MIT at all, to kind of explain your story?
No, I actually haven't. I don't even think he knows I exist, other than at the time when I received that subpoena, I had reached out to him because I had heard that he was involved with the case as well.
Hmm.
And he basically said that he couldn't say anything
Mm,
because
yeah,
it was an active case, just
yeah.
like mine. So that was the only time I've ever reached out to him. I know that he does big things. I just keep up with him because
Hmm.
he was a really cool early builder back in the day. So I just follow him. But
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
never talked to him. He probably doesn't know that I exist, but here we are.
Probably not, but it might be interesting, to like touch base with him and see, how that turned out, and like, where he's at on his journey. But this story kind of plays perfectly into like where you've kind of started to develop now. So that time frame, it was 2014, 2013 era. How long before you started developing a different way of going about this? You'd already kind of like had your prerequisite in Bitcoin mining. You kind of learned the ins and outs, the technical know-how, the jargon. You understand Bitcoin at this point. So like, was it 2015, 2017 era, or did you take a hiatus and, start developing in like a later time?
Yeah, good question. So after that whole experience, needless to say, I was pretty shell shocked. That was not at all what my goals were. That was I took a step back really from mining, went back to traditional finance, continued to work at a bank. Took about 3 years off. So it was about end of 2016. I had been following Bitcoin, and that's what was really cool to me is throughout the whole journey, I was able to really take a step back and then relearn Bitcoin. So look at the bigger picture of it all, understand a lot more about how it can change the world. And over the course of about 2 or 3 years, seeing how disruptive the technology is and how it could create a better, freer world if you make money free and not centralized.
Mhm.
And again, with my finance background, I saw all the inefficiencies at a bank, like just sending money to somebody. You'd have to come in and send a wire transfer. You pay a $50 fee, then you pay on the back end with foreign currency exchange, and you get screwed on those exchange rates. Everybody would walk in thinking you're getting the spot exchange rate, and it's like, no, you're getting screwed on that too. And then
Yeah.
there's a fee when they receive it. And in my mind, I was just like, man, Bitcoin is so much more efficient just to send money, the value of it, the ethos of Bitcoin. So after taking a step back, learning more about it, I continued to watch the industry grow. And over those years, we're getting close to like that 2017 bull run where people are starting to learn more about Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Uh, Once I learned more, I decided, this is something that I really want to focus on. I had a bad experience because of, I think, how early I was in what I was trying to do. But that didn't take away from the fact that I think it's the future and it's something that I want to do. So back in 2016, 17-ish, I started getting back into mining again. So I had handful of miners in my basement, and I would reuse the heat in the wintertime to heat my house, offset some of the heating costs there. This was at a time where you could still profitably mine even if you had a residential electric rate. So I was mining anyway, might as well reuse that heat. But then that got me thinking again of, what if we could just recapture heat and offset heat? And I thought about the whole economic model of mining and where that was going. So about 2017, 18, started fiddling with the idea of reusing heat to offset electricity costs. And theoretically, I mean, if you are bundling the heat and selling it as a product, you could really mine at even a negative electric rate, depending on various factors. So to me, I was watching the mining landscape develop. And although I wasn't involved on any industrial scale, I saw that it was going to get more competitive. And if
Mhm.
Bitcoin wants to succeed, it needs to have a competitive, vibrant mining landscape. So uh, to me, heat reuse was really important because it was like, I think that's where it's going to go is as you get more competitive and you drive your electricity costs down, then the miners are going to say, okay, what's next? How else can we monetize this? And they're going
Absolutely.
to turn to their other product. A buddy of mine said perfectly, miners make BTC and BTU, and you're selling, or you have one that you're monetizing the BTC, and you're throwing BTU out the door into the environment. Eventually it'll catch on where that is a product that you bundle up and sell. And we're
Mhm.
seeing that now, which is cool. So, and I guess the year was about 2020-ish. I really
Mhm.
started to pursue that idea seriously. So I was still working at the bank. I wasn't doing this full time, but I was experimenting with ways on how I could capture that heat. And sort of my next step on the journey was, hey, I got these miners in my basement that are driving my wife insane. The noise is ridiculous, and if you could capture that heat in liquid, you'd have way more use cases. You could eliminate the noise. You could pump that anywhere you want. You can store heat in water very efficiently. So I was like, that's going to be the next stage, and that's kind of where heat reuse should go. So
Yeah.
in 2020, I started buying miners, taking them apart, fiddling with them to try to capture that heat efficiently. We worked with immersion systems that ended up being very costly and annoying with the oils. I can't tell you how many oil leaks I had in our warehouse floor that are still there today, because once that
Mm-hmm.
oil gets there, it stays.
How do you pull it
Um,
up? Yeah.
exactly. And then, like, at the end of the day, when we were running our miners in immersion, that even the temperatures weren't that good, and you had to have, your centrifugal pumps and material compatibility. And I was thinking, again, the way my brain works, there has to be a better way to do this. And that's when you look at data centers and where they have been heading, and even just like home computer cooling, everything's water based. Uh, Oftentimes you can do it much cheaper. Water has way better physical properties at cooling than immersion fluid. So I set out to build better water cooling technology. Uh, in that time, that's when like the S19 hydros came out. So it really validated kind of where my mind was headed, as water cooling being important. Um, so we just kind of went to work, and 2002, I started doing it full time, focused on developing the most advanced direct to chip liquid cooling block. And here we've launched last month, October 2024, with a block that performs extremely well, geared towards home miners, small miners that can give them really good liquid cooling at affordable costs without dealing with the bulk and headaches of immersion. So it's kind
So
of where we are
before,
today.
for sure, and it's an incredible story, and I want to get into it. But before we do that, let's kind of just like like talk about this heat reuse side of things. We're seeing today, we're seeing hash rate soar. I mean, are we in 800 x? No, we're not quite there yet, but we're like 750 exahash right now. The Bitcoin price is pumping. We're starting to, well, not pumping. We're starting to touch the all-time
We're getting there.
highs. We're starting to get into that bull market feel. Trump won the election, where we're starting to feel that. And you kind of talked about how you and a friend were looking towards the future and seeing like, where is this eventually going to go? I had Bob Burnett on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and by the time this one comes out, that one will be out as well. So Bob is really talking. He's got this whole thesis about the elephants, the horses, and the rabbits. Have you heard that story?
I have not. No.
So I'm just gonna kind of paraphrase it, but basically you've got these elephants in a field, and you start shooting elephants. Elephants are super slow. You're gonna shoot most of the elephants before they are able to get out of the way. They're super slow, they're super large, they're huge targets. The elephants are analogous to like the riots and the marathons, and these huge like 700 megawatt, 1 gigawatt mining facilities. Like, yeah, they have a lot of power. They're doing a lot of like hashing, but at the end of the day, if regulatory forces want to come in and control them, co-opt them or something like that, like, it's going to be super easy for the government to come in and either shut them down or control them in one way, shape, or form. And then you have the horses. You look out into a field and there's, thousands of horses. Like, you're going to start shooting. Like, you might hit 10, 20 horses before they scatter, because they're pretty quick, and they're kind of big, but they're quick. They can get out of the way. And that's analogous to like Bob Burnett's barefoot mining and abundant mines, like these 5 to 20 megawatt miners who, they're all over the place. They're kind of scattered throughout the world, running off of hydropower, geothermal power, just different situations like that. And then you have the rabbits, and the rabbits are these little guys. People running 1 to 5 miners in their home, and you look into a field, you see thousands, millions of rabbits, and you start shooting, you're gonna hit like 5 of them before they just completely scatter, because they're quick as shit and they're tiny, right? So this is all just to say, like, at the end of the day, the Bitcoin mining network, this whole ethos of like decentralization and building your own block templates and, securing the network, like, we need all types. Sure, we need that aspect of like the large mega miners doing what they're doing, but we also really need like a lot more of the small to medium sized miners. And so what's going to happen is, as Bitcoin reduces the reward you have to become 100 times more efficient in your operations, and you have to find ways of monetizing waste. So, we talk about, you were literally talking about the BTUs that are generated that are just being, evacuated into atmosphere. How can we as a network, as the small to medium sized miners, utilize that waste? Because every 4 years our revenue is getting cut in half, and we can't compete with Marathon and Riot and, these large industrial miners. But what we can do is we can build businesses that need to utilize heat in one way, shape, or form to create a product that you then sell to the market. My favorite is agriculture. Okay. Like, how many times have you heard that, like, these big, huge warehouses growing food, growing crops need to, build some sort of radiant heat system that allows to heat the crops so that they can, continue profiting off of the actual product, like the plants and the crops and stuff. Well, if you introduce Bitcoin mining, and let's say you've got, say you've got half a megawatt online, you're using it to heat the warehouse that's growing crops, which you're then selling, you're reducing your cost of operations, and it's allowing you to generate more revenue. This is where I personally see the Bitcoin mining sector, like mining movement, going towards. In 5 to 10 years, we're going to see businesses popping up all over the place, and it's happening today. We're going to see them popping up where, they're utilizing Bitcoin mining as a way of generating heat, the BTUs, so that they can continue operating their business much more efficiently and effectively. And it's just that ethos of cut down on waste, monetize waste, reduce your operating costs, and, increase your efficiency. It's just this ethos of Bitcoin, and it just feeds into it. It's completely separate from the fiat mind virus that we talked about earlier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so this is a long-winded way of saying your device, your CryoBlock, is a perfect way for these small businesses like the home miners. It's great. I'm a home miner myself. I love the fact that I could potentially get one of these and heat my house with it in a much more effective and efficient way. But think about the amount of businesses that could utilize this hybrid cooling technology to increase their profits through time, because you have dedicated the last 4.5 years to building and developing this product. So I just kind of wanted to set that scene before we kind of start talking about the CryoBlock. And the CryoBlock, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, like, this is an amazing thing for like the small rabbits and even the horses, because reducing infrastructure costs. You don't have to pay for these large industrial pumps. You don't have to pay for all of this fluid. You don't have to pay for huge tanks and heat dry coolers and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of things that you don't have to purchase anymore. I mean, literally, it's a small pump, it's a radiator fan, and it's some tubing and a heat sink that allows, like, the core of the CryoBlock. Like, this is incredible. It's absolutely insane. And water isn't corrosive, so it doesn't like eat up your fittings, it doesn't eat up your tubes. So, like, if you do a really good job, which it sounds like you guys have, and we'll kind of dive into it a little bit, if you do a really good job developing your product and developing the fittings and the connection points, leaking and seepage is not something that you really have to worry about. You talked a little bit about how the computer industry and the data center networks have been utilizing water for cooling for years. I mean, shit, it's been probably decades that they've been doing stuff like that. You hear about people building computers all the time. It's water cooled towers all day long. And at first you think there's no way that you're going to cool a computer with water. That doesn't make any sense. But then when you really dive into the heuristics of it, you're like, okay, I get it. So with all of that preface beforehand, let's talk about the CryoBlock. Let's talk about, this iterative process. You started just building, tinkering in your garage, and now 4 years later, you have a business, you have a product, and the market is going to see this product and they're going to fucking die for it. I guarantee you the next 5 years for you guys is going to be an insane ride. So let's just hear this story. Let's just kind of talk about the CryoBlock. Let's explain to it, like the listener, what it is and how it works.
Definitely. And I hope you're right on all that, Trevor. That'd be awesome. And I really love the product that we've developed because that's how I started. You know, I was a home miner. I'm making it for you. And I had talked earlier. Our business approach is really to start from the bottom up. Everybody's concerned about mega miners, which I get, and there has to be a diverse network of miners, but no one's really serving the small miner. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, especially when you look at that heat reuse, like you were talking about. When you're reusing heat, one of your biggest points is not then efficiency or really even your electric cost. It's the cost of your system. Because you're competing against a $50 space heater. You're competing against more efficient ways to create heat, you know, using natural gas or using heat pumps even. So if you can take a resistive heater like Bitcoin miner and have a system that is very low cost and easy to use, it makes that heat reuse so much more viable than having giant immersion systems that are super complex and expensive, or very expensive 3-phase hydro system. So that's kind of our goal, is like lower the barrier of entry, make it very usable, user friendly, easy to understand, low cost, to be able to capture and reuse that heat. So you're dead on there. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So to kind of pick up where we left off, as we were developing we settled on direct to chip being the most scalable and the most useful in the long term. You can get higher heat densities because of the properties of water. Water's available everywhere in the world, and even if you don't have clean water, it's really easy to distill and create basically perfectly pure water. So using that as a fluid and just creating water blocks that circulate that water in a efficient way. You don't have to have these giant pumps. Water is way less viscous than oil, so it's just a better solution. So we set on using water as our cooling method and the fluid to recapture that heat. So then the next issue was, how do we develop a product that does better than the existing products? Because at this point, hydros had been introduced, and you know there were some issues with hydros. You have the bendy straws and the quick connects that hold everything together, which I still don't personally get that design, but you know, I guess it's working okay. So we replaced that with like solid EPDM tubing, which is a synthetic rubber. It bends, it doesn't crack, it doesn't deform. It's resistant to high temperatures and pHs, things like that.
Look, we all know that Bitmain doesn't give a shit about the end user. They're producing these products in a high number, a high quantity. They don't care about the fittings. They don't care about the tubing. They don't care about the straws. You literally said it earlier. You're working from the bottom up. And so, you know, like, sorry to interrupt you, but like, this is important for people to realize, is that Bitmain doesn't care about you as a user. CryoBlock and Cryobyte does care about you because you're the person that they're going to build their product for. Sorry.
That's exactly right. And because I was building it for myself too, you know, like when we tested other liquid cooled solutions with those bendy straws, there was constantly leaks. You had drips all the time. Your entire system is held together by dozens of tiny little O-rings. It just didn't make sense.
Right.
So we really took a step back when we discovered all this and started from scratch. And we said, okay, we love water as the working fluid. It's available, it's cheap, it's easy, anybody can do it. How do we minimize the leaks and get the best performance at the cheapest price? So we set out and we designed the most advanced liquid cooled water block for proof of work mining. And, you know, a lot of water blocks out there on hydro miners are what are called serpentine style. They just have a channel that runs back and forth. And what you get with that is, as the water goes through that channel, it heats up. And as it heats up, it does a less effective job at cooling as it goes. So you end up getting these hot spots, especially where you have like high density chips, like on an air cooled miner. A lot of the chips are at the front of the board where your air is entering. So using a serpentine style, real cheap, easy to manufacture water block, you get hot spots. You don't get even cooling. You don't get efficient cooling. So we redesigned the block from the ground up. We optimized all of the coolant flow to provide even cooling. We target like clusters of heat and chips specifically to eliminate heat, and you get like ridiculously even chip temperatures using one of our blocks. In addition, we have microfins. So microfins are a technology that a lot of cold plates are starting to use. They increase the surface area and allow heat to transfer into the fluid way more efficiently. No one was using that design, so we have microfins that allow for better heat transfer. We also looked at like the thermal paste. Bitmain comes installed with the cheapest mass-produced thermal paste you can use. We have an extremely efficient, high thermally conductive thermal paste that will reduce any heat resistance, so it allows heat to transfer from the chips into the water block much more efficiently. And then to go back, we redesigned the fittings. We use fittings that are called barb and compression fittings. So instead of the cheap little quick connects, this is what's used in like high performance computing. And even as we were building it, it looks a lot like a car, actually, believe it
I
or
was
not.
gonna say race
Yep.
cars use these fittings as well.
Exactly. And when you think about it, a car is built to perform for decades at a
Yes.
time with little to no maintenance, to be extremely reliable with no leaks. You know, quick connects, you're hopefully ideally not connecting and disconnecting your miner every single day. You want that thing to just be tight and secure on there. So we replaced the connections with barb and compression fittings. We actually designed and manufactured our own tubing. So it's a single tube. And then instead of having manifolds that have other connections and screws and points of failure, it's just a single piece of rubber that divides that flow evenly into the inlets and outlets. So you eliminate tons of points of failures. And when you combine all of those together, you get a liquid cooled direct to chip water block that is extremely high performing. So it's amazing kind of the progression that we've done. Not a lot of people have seen that, obviously, since we just kind of launched last month. But when you strap one of these on your machine, you'll notice right away the improved cooling, how efficient things are. And again, we really think we can keep driving down pricing to where our solution is a no-brainer. Why would you have an air-cooled miner when you can make it a liquid-cooled miner more efficient and make up that money that you spent on an upgrade just out of cost savings on your power that you're saving? So
100%.
I could go on all day, but
we will. We're going to continue going on about it because it's an amazing product, and I want people to understand how it works. There is one thing. It's a hybrid cooling system. So while you can cool it, you are mainly cooling it with the water, the direct to chip cooling. There's also this other aspect of you're using the air from the fans that are stock installed on the miner itself running through the miner. You're also kind of cooling that way. So the way that I understood it from the video that you shared on YouTube is the water comes through the block, goes through in whatever, direction that it does. But then you've also got this ambient air temperature flowing over it, which is also helping to cool the water before it even goes to the radiator, which is then cooling it and recirculating it back through the water block, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So with the hybrid unit, it's pretty cool because when you're upgrading your air-cooled miner, you still have heat sinks that are soldered on the back. And when you run air through, in addition to running water through, you can cool it even more efficiently. So you get ridiculous temperatures. You can run these. We had them running in our warehouse here in Ohio. It was 104 degrees, no air circulating at all. So no fans going in or out. And we were running these at like 40, 50 degree board temperatures, which is like 50 to 65 degree chip temperatures the whole summer, uninterrupted, zero issues at all because of the ability to cool them.
What were you getting for like your terahash output for these machines?
We were running them at stock settings for most of the testing. So like 105-ish on 104 terahash model.
Even still, dude, that's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And where you really see the difference is in the power consumption, because I don't know if a lot of miners know this, but power consumption is directly related to your chip temperature. Regardless of whether it's really cold, really hot, you're going to consume more power as your chips heat up. So in a summer environment, when you're running in a 104 degree warehouse, if that was air cooled, we would be consuming roughly, I would say, about 300 to 500 watts more just running an air cooled compared to what we were running with our hybrid cooled miner.
Absolutely.
So imagine consistently saving 500 watts of energy just because you're providing better, more efficient cooling. That's kind of what we get. So a lot of cost savings there.
I seriously, there's a lot of cost savings. I think you said it was like the whole kit is like $700 shipped out the door, something like that. My miner, my hash rate heater, with the miner, it cost me about $3,500. Okay, so like you came into my life at a horrible time, Ryan. Like you came in like way too late.
Oh yeah, I did. Yep.
I mean, I could have told my wife. I could have been like, babe, we're gonna run the S9 on the counter for another heating season. It's fine. Next summer, I'm gonna play around with some water block cooling technology. It's cool. But no, I had to go and buy this thing. It's almost like I'm in construction, so every time I lose a tool and I go buy a new one, I always find the old tool, you know what I mean? So then I end up with two. It's kind of similar to that. And I'm just joshing with you, but at the end of the day, like I'm super excited to play around with this because there's so many heat reuse applications that I could use this in. And I'm just thinking of all the different ways, like, hot water heater, radiant floor system, like just radiator heat in general, heating up crops, drying food. Like there's so many different things that it can come into play. And then this is something that I love, and we haven't touched on it yet, but Zach Bombsta's Loki kit. Okay. You don't need to use your 220 volt power supply with this system. It's not pulling any more juice than the S19 was beforehand. So if you don't have access to 220 watts and you want to still use the system, you absolutely can. You just change out the heat sinks for one of these water blocks. You change out your power supply with an APW3++. You put a Loki chip on it. Bada bing, bada boom. You've got a 2 hashboard system that's cooled with this hybrid cooling technology, and you've got a really cool compact space heater that is extremely quiet, extremely efficient, and super effective at doing whatever it is that you want to do. So just absolutely blowing my mind. If you want to overclock this thing, you can overclock the holy living hell out of it, because guess what?
Oh yeah.
Like people don't really understand, but the amount of overclocking that you can do is directly in proportion to the amount of cooling that you can do, because your chip temperatures are basically your bottleneck. If you can keep that board cool, you can keep those chips cool, you can overclock the holy living fuck out of these machines, man. Like,
yep, you really can. And another thing too, like a lot of times if you have good thermals, then you start running into like your PSU maxing out. But if you're saving 500 watts of energy or even more by properly cooling it, that gives you more headroom to even put more energy into it. So
absolutely,
it's really cool how far you can overclock these. And we'll have data that comes out. I'm excited for some products that we have in the hopper that would allow you to do that. But you're totally right. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And you touched on like 3 really good points. So with the Loki boards, there's a lot of interest in single board, just very small, compact space heating. If you liquid cool that, you can just have one water block and you can liquid cool a single board build. You can't do that with immersion. You're not going to buy an entire immersion tank and all the expenses of an immersion setup to cool a single board. So then you're stuck with just air cooling as your only option. But with a CryoBlock, you just strap one block on. You can use, like you were talking before, small computer radiators, preferably aluminum. You can mix metals if you'd like to and use corrosion inhibitors and stuff that we can get into later. But for very cheap and easy, you have now an entire liquid cooled single board system, which is really cool. And then another thing I want to touch on that you mentioned was the noise. That's one of the biggest things that home miners and small miners hate, not only because of the decibel level, but the frequency, that whine that you hear. When you are liquid cooling infrastructure, you're capturing that heat in liquid, and you're able to run that over any size or form radiator that you want. So you can run this over a larger radiator that uses very slow, quiet fans to remove the same amount of heat. You don't have to force all of your cooling into the size of a shoebox. So when you take that heat off the system and externally cool it, you have so much more flexibility. And what that does, we're running full setups, 3 board systems that are liquid cooled with very small infrastructure, and the decibel level is in the 50s. which is
Mhm.
insane when you think about it. Uh,
Absolutely.
from my experience, and someone check me on this if I'm wrong, but I'm not an audio engineer, but I think that for every 10 decibels increase or decrease, the human ear perceives that as being roughly twice as loud. So a 65 decibel minor is roughly twice as loud to a human ear as a 55 decibel
Mhm.
minor. So comparing two systems, our system is half as loud. And then the frequency that we're running these fans, it's very slow RPMs, maybe 3,000. So you
Mhm.
don't have that high pitch whine. So when we have our systems running, they're in the room right next to me and I can't even hear them.
Mhm.
Whereas when we then do like head to head with air cooled systems, it's extremely loud.
Yeah, I think about real quick. I think about so like you see this AC Infinity fan behind me. I
Mhm.
installed one of these on my hash rate heater at home, and if I, it runs at 55%. So I can't remember what the exact decibel rating is, but if I go from 55% to 65%, so just a 10% increase in the speed of the fan, it's unbearable. It seriously is. And so you drop it down that 10% and it's like a comfortable like noise level. And I like these AC Infinity fans because they have a different pitch. Like the stock fans on these machines are incredibly
Oh,
annoying. Like
oh yeah.
I've said it so many times. I've told the story of bringing that S9 home and putting it on my counter, and my wife coming home and saying, "Get this thing out of my house right now, or I swear to God, I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame her because they're annoying as hell. So, being able to reduce the speed of the fans and still get like 10 times the amount of efficiency out of the block is an incredible feat of engineering. Ryan, it's incredible. I just
Yep.
can't say it enough. It's absolutely insane. So let's kind of dive into the technical numbers a little bit, and like the cost savings, and then like when do you guys plan on having, some products that the people can actually get a hold of?
Yeah, good question. So, I guess technical numbers to start. There's such a wide variety because to kind of backtrack a little bit, the hybrid cooling is pretty cool because you don't have to run back fans if you don't want. It can be a total liquid cooled setup where all of your cooling is done by the CryoBlocks. But one of the benefits of upgrading an air cooled miner is that you can still run back fans that provide additional cooling. Another cool example is when you're reusing heat, a lot of times you don't want to capture all that heat. If you hit a limit to where, hey, you want to exhaust heat, those back fans, if you're using like third party firmware, Luxor brains, you can start exhausting heat externally and it's not being collected by the liquid loop. So you can actually have like thermal management. So it's hard to run through all the numbers because there
Hmm.
are an insane amount of scenarios that you can use with when you have a liquid and air cooling system all in one. But we're getting, stock 25 to 26 joules per terahash at ambient of like 25 on 104 terahash model S19J Pros. So well below like what the advertised nameplate efficiencies are. Um, and it's adaptable. You can have, we run these even on like two 240 millimeter radiators.
Hmm.
You could have that, or you could have a giant dry cooler outside running 10 of these. So your efficiencies will vary on all of that, but we can provide cooling to an entire unit. So a stock S19J Pro using 20 watts to pump the fluid compared to like an immersion system, which uses 140 watts to pump the
Hmm.
fluid. So you're saving 120 watts there. It's also providing better cooling. So you're saving a couple hundred watts as far as your chips just running slower or running at a lower temperature. So all in, what we see, depending on how you're running it, you're saving anywhere from 50 watts to 800 watts just providing better cooling and providing that cooling in a more efficient manner. So it's insane what you can get for it. And then there's all the heat reuse applications. There's other things to talk about too that miners don't necessarily focus on because you can't
Hmm.
see like the numbers, but mining and electronics in general are affected by thermal stress. So the hotter
Yeah.
you're running your miner, typically, rule of thumb, the shorter lifespan it's going to have. So providing better cooling can extend the lifespan of that machine. And especially as a home miner or a small miner, that's a big capital cost. You don't have
Yeah.
$100 million sitting in your pocket that you can just raise from the public and go fund new miners. When your miner goes out, you're having to convince your wife, hey, we can spend $4,000 more, I promise.
Yeah,
So
that's a
taking
huge
care,
factor, bro.
isn't it? Yeah, we want to make those conversations with your wife easier. That's
Yeah,
that's
I
really our
love it.
goal.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. You've already made the conversation easier. She's actually, I'll be honest, she's a little irritated with me that I spent $2,200 on my infrastructure for my home heater. And
Yeah,
she's like, you could have just waited. You could have just waited a little bit. I was like, babe, I didn't know. I didn't know what would happen. So that's neither here nor there.
yeah.
I'll make it up to my wife at Christmas time. It's not a big deal.
There you
But
go.
I am curious. So we talk about the water that can be thrown in there. Can you also run? So I come from a mechanical background, like working on cars and stuff like that. Can you run a water glycol mix through it to increase the efficiency of the cooling, or is that kind of not? Does that work or not?
Yeah, you actually can. We have some running right now in our
Okay.
warehouse. It actually uses the same cooling as like your car. So a lot of parts on your car are aluminum.
Hmm.
So they have corrosion inhibitors because when you mix metal, you can get corrosion. Everything on our system is unique because it's aluminum. All of our fittings are aluminum. Radiators that we use are aluminum. But you can absolutely use a water glycol mix. It can be something you get from your local AutoZone auto parts store, which is
That's what I was
crazy.
curious about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because again, when we're building these, it's like, man, this is oddly similar to a car, how you would cool a car. So we have those running through. They don't necessarily improve the heat transfer
Hmm.
because glycol is not as good as just pure distilled water,
Hmm.
but they still cool much better than like an immersion setup or an air setup.
Hmm.
And they prohibit freezing. You know
Yeah, that was my biggest
yeah.
thought was like for the people, out in Wyoming in the high desert when it gets really cold at night, keeping these machines from freezing because just as much as you don't want them to get hot, you also don't want them to get too cold. So the
Mhm.
glycol mixture is kind of more of a freezing inhibitor, I guess.
Exactly. Yep. So you can run that through there, no problem at all. Helps prevent corrosion. They have mixtures, cooling fluids that last 5 years to even
Hmm.
lifetimes. You can drain the loop and perform maintenance. We obviously recommend that
Yeah.
maybe every 6 months to a year. But to be honest with you, sometimes you push these things and you don't need any maintenance at all. So it's
Yeah.
pretty, it's up to each use case in particular on how you're going to run this thing. But that's what's really cool is you like with immersion cooling, you have to use a dielectric fluid and it's all basically the same. With this, you can run distilled water, you can run a glycol mix. It depends what you're aiming for. If you're in a very hot environment where you're not going to freeze, you can use distilled water, maybe put some growth inhibitors in there so you don't have fungus and stuff growing in there.
Hmm.
But then it's going to run more efficiently and cool more efficiently. So
And
it's cool what you can run through it.
something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. I know a few people, home miners, plebs, we've had a couple of them on the podcast who are using immersion setups, and they're happy with their setups. But one thing is this recycling of e-waste. We all, every 4 years we got to get more efficient. And so some people are like, okay, well, let me improve my setup by buying a new machine like the S21. But what happens when you have to pull this S19 out of a oil bath? You said it earlier, you kind of alluded to it. You can't get rid of all this oil. So there's no way to really efficiently put this back to a stock machine. Like, this has got to be an oil machine from here on out, basically. So the resale factor of that machine goes down by like a factor of 20. Whereas with this CryoBlock, the oil, like, it's not oil. First and foremost, the water never touches the chips. It's just passing over through a different system. So it seems to me that it would be so easy to just pull the heat sinks off of, pull the board, the CryoBlock off the chips, and then re-glue with some thermal paste the chips back onto it, and sell that miner to somebody who wants to get into Bitcoin mining and then upgrade to a new, much more efficient machine. It seems
That's
like a
exactly it.
super easy thing to do. So, I mean, you're Ryan, you have no idea where you're going in the next 5 years. Like, you're changing the game of Bitcoin mining for home heat reuse and small businesses. It's absolutely incredible because the cost savings is immense, man. Like, people don't have the ability to go spend $5,000 to $14,000 on this small infrastructure to heat their home. But holy shit, they can afford $3,000 if they really wanted to spend the time. You want to build out a 5 miner setup, you want to build all this infrastructure, the tubing and stuff like that. Like, it's not just the CryoBlock that you need. You need a lot of other infrastructure as well, but like, you are making it so much more approachable. And that is what I love about what you guys are doing, is the approachability and the get off zero factor. I can't remember the term for it. There's something like, when you get into a new hobby, the price really matters, and you're just changing the game, man. So tell people when they can buy, like, obviously I don't think you guys have any right now in stock, but when can they buy one of these setups, and what will it cost them shipped out the door?
Yeah, definitely. So our bread and butter right now is the S19 J Pros. Those are the most common machines. So we started with that, obviously. Most effective too for like home mining, smaller mining. You don't have to spend $5,000 on a new machine. They're, I think, $300 a pop right now, which is crazy.
Super cheap.
So we have units for that in production. We're all sold out of those right now, but we have units in production that we should be getting here within, I would say, about 2 months. So 8 weeks or so. All of the tubing, thermal grease, hardware for mounting, all of that stuff is already received and ready to go. So we're just waiting for those blocks to come in. So to answer your question, I would say about 2 months.
Okay.
And on our website, what we want to do too is collect information. Like, we don't want to just put them for sale and have people buy them right away. If you're interested in a kit, you can fill out a form and sort of like reserve your spot. First come, first serve type of deal, where if you are interested in these, put in your name on a form. We'll get back to you as soon as we receive them in-house. Unlike other companies, we're not going to send it, wait, 8 to 12 week lead time. We're only going to sell these and send them out when we have them in hand, when they've been tested. We go through strict quality control. So we want to make sure every system is working perfectly. So we'll have that in about 8 weeks. And then, like I mentioned, our bread and butter is the S19J Pro, but our technology really scales to any of the modern miners. Ever since they came out with the screw-on heat sinks, we can adapt any air-cooled miner to basically be water-cooled. We're focused heavily on Bitmain right now, just because that's where all of our R&D has been. When we started this journey, WhatsMiner wasn't as popular, but we hope to scale to those as well. And hopefully in the future, work with especially the US based, the Auradines of the world, Jack Dorsey, Proto, Block, all of that. And really anybody who's looking to create a Bitcoin system. We can adapt our technology very easily to fit really any design. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. Let us know, because we love working with Bitcoin miners. Like I said, I came back into this space because I believe in the future of it. I believe that it will change the world. I believe it will make it a better spot. So we're ready to work with anybody who wants to work with us too. So
yeah, and we appreciate you. We appreciate the ethos of Bitcoin and you building your company around that. So when people purchase this kit from you, it's an entire kit. It comes with everything they need to get their S19, everything except for the miner, obviously. And it's everything they need to get their miner transitioned from an air-cooled miner to a hybrid miner, correct?
Yeah, you do need to provide the radiator unit because
Okay.
there's so much flexibility. So you have to provide the radiator unit and the pump. I will say stay tuned, because we have some products in the hopper that fulfill that. Some ready-made systems that will be pretty cool. Like I said, we just launched a month ago.
Yeah.
We just wanted to get our product out there, but we have some full systems that will be coming in the future. So stay tuned. But as of right now, what that kit does is it comes with the water blocks, the tubing, the mounting hardware, the thermal grease. It makes your miner ready to be cooled by water. You just have to provide that water via a pump and a radiator unit of some sort.
And are you gonna create some like FAQs, some breakdowns for like where people can buy those off the shelf parts?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll have all that available to you. And like I said, in not too long, hopefully we can speak about it more publicly. We'll have a system ready to roll. That's again, one of our ethos is driving down the cost. It's going to be very affordable, efficient, ready for a small miner to use. So stay tuned. But yeah, we'll break all that down too.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. It's a brave new world here in Bitcoin mining, and I think heat reuse is the future. Everybody, people are probably tired of hearing me say it. They're like, Trevor, we know, we get it. Heat reuse is the future. But I'm serious, guys. Like this is going to change the entire mining landscape for the home miners. And as more and more people come into Bitcoin and realize that they can utilize BTUs and Bitcoin at the same time, they're going to want to figure out a way to do it cheaply and effectively and efficiently. And you're changing the game for it, man. Like you're absolutely doing Satoshi's work out here, brother, like 100%. And so, as this moves forward, I am personally going to get my hands on one of these things. I'm going to build it. I'm going to do a couple of videos on it. I'm going to share it with the people, teach them how to do it as well. I have an idea for building, just small, single board, like we talked about, single board Loki variant hash rate heaters that are air cooled with little radiator fans, and maybe even have somebody print me a nice neat little box that goes around and is just like a really small form factor. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to get to play around with it. But as we close out today, I've got a couple questions I want to ask you. So we talked a little bit about the philosophical, the ethos of Bitcoin. Ryan, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Bitcoin to me means a better world. I truly believe that if you can take finance and take the power of money away from centralized people and put it in the hands of all the people in a fair way, that we're going to have a better system. And it's going to take a while to play out. We've been putting up fights against governments and stuff, and I think we're actually getting to the point where we win. I can't wait to get there, especially from like my experience from 2012 on, kind of seeing that push back against Bitcoin. I truly believe it's just going to create a better world for us. So, what's cool is it will be generations to come. It's not all going to happen overnight. Adoption curves are real, and it takes time for technology to take hold. But I see that happening. I've seen that since 2012 till now, and I think we'll see it from now and until the end of our days, hopefully. So
100%. We're on the bleeding edge, brother. Like, and
we
you
are.
are pushing that needle forward with the products that you're developing. So it's incredible to watch. Let's see. So where do you see obviously we kind of alluded to it, but in more concrete words, where do you see the future of Bitcoin mining headed?
Yeah, I think that competition and efficiency will always continue to increase. I think that, gone are the days of being able to just plug in an S9 at your home and print Satoshis. So I think that we'll see competition ramp up, but I think we'll start to see more unique use cases take hold. Especially when we're competing against AI for all these large power deals. I think we'll see Bitcoin start to locate in areas where, like flare gas or where there's stranded energy. I think we'll see a lot of heat reuse. I think it'll take longer to catch on because each case is more unique. But using that heat in better ways instead of just throwing it into the environment, I think that's going to be a big play for the coming cycles in Bitcoin. So to answer your question, I think that Bitcoin will grow and become more competitive, but I think that it will start being more in pockets where there's stranded energy and more unique cases like heat reuse and things like that. I think eventually we'll transfer sort of away from these giant mines dominating, and I think they'll have products that are 100 units at one location and 200 at another, and we'll have miners mining for heat in cold environments and in wintertime in different areas. So, and that's where really the decentralization of the whole mining infrastructure comes in. I think we're centralized pretty much right now, but I think that will trend in the opposite direction for years to come.
Well, and you're already seeing it happen. Yaron Mellerud from Hash Labs, they work up in Norway. They're working on projects right now to heat small communities with centralized Bitcoin miners. So you're seeing it happen. It, like you said, it's in small pockets. It's all over the world. But energy generation is already super decentralized. I mean, there's small pockets all around the world of like geothermal and volcanic energy. Hydropower dams. The sun does not always shine in every location. The wind does not always blow. So you see that, and Bitcoin mining is just going to allow for that decentralization of energy generation, building out of small grids. Things won't be tied together. Like right now, we have a nationwide grid that's kind of all tied in together, except for like ERCOT. But even there, ERCOT's tied in this big, huge grid in Texas. So you're going to see it happen. It's going to take time. I'm super excited for the future. I'm super bullish at the end of the day. So, it's a brave new world. It's hopeful. It's exciting. So, well, brother, I appreciate you coming on today. I really enjoyed this conversation. Tell the audience where they can get a hold of you and how they can, reach out and contact you about CryoByte.
Yeah, definitely. So you can go directly to our website, which is CryobyteLabs.com. And all of our handles are CryobyteLabs as well. So you can reach out on Twitter. You can find me at Ryan_Ramminger on Twitter and Telegram. Feel free to reach out. I like to consider myself very approachable. I'd love to talk to anybody who wants to chat. So you can find us there. And Trevor, thank you. Thank you for what you do. I mean, getting that word out is super important. I love seeing you progress. Your office looks amazing too, which is great. And really evangelizing kind of that next step for mining, the heat reuse and the smaller miners. It's really important. It's important for decentralization, for Bitcoin to achieve what it's meant to be. And you do really good work. So thank you.
Well, thank you, man. It's an honor to be part of this network and just playing my part. I appreciate that. It means a lot. So, guys, I will put all that in the show notes. Again, Ryan, thank you so much. If you guys enjoyed this episode, as I said before, please like, comment, let me know how you guys feel about it. Share it out, share the orange signal out, as they say over on Simply Bitcoin. But stay tuned, because the next episode will be with Mark Werlin from Sat and Pleb on Twitter. We're going to be talking about his journey from the Marine Corps to civilian life and building products as well. So it's really cool, kind of playing into the heat reuse things as well. Again, Ryan, one more time, thank you so much for being here, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we will see you on the next episode.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.